The frozen winds of Scandinavia howl across a barren, icy shore. In the distance, shadows emerge. Long ships slicing through black waters, their dragon-headed prows glinting in the dying sun. These were the Vikings, fierce warriors, master sailors, and feared raiders of the medieval world. For centuries, their origins have been shrouded in mystery. Were they a pure bloodline born in the cold north? Or the product of a forgotten migration that rewrote history? Ancient sagas speak of gods and giants, but now science holds the key. Deep within ancient graves, preserved beneath layers of permafrost, fragments of DNA have survived, waiting to speak. And when scientists finally decoded them, the truth was more shocking than any legend. A revelation that would challenge everything we thought we knew about the Northmen. This is the untold story of where the Vikings really came from, and why their rise was no accident. From the late 8th century to the mid-11th, the Vikings dominated the seas of Europe. Their sleek longships reached as far as the coasts of North America, centuries before Columbus. They raided monasteries in England, traded furs in the markets of Constantinople, and carved settlements deep into the icy lands of Greenland. Chronicles written by terrified monks painted them as bloodthirsty invaders, but archaeology reveals a more complex picture. Skilled navigators, farmers, traders, and explorers. Yet, behind the steel of their swords and the strength of their shields, one question haunted historians: where did they truly come from? The Norse sagas placed their origins in mythical realms, but geography and linguistics hinted at deeper roots, stretching beyond Scandinavia itself. For decades, evidence was fragmentary, conflicting, and incomplete. It seemed the truth was buried too deep. But then, a single discovery, hidden beneath centuries of ice and soil, began to crack the mystery wide open. It began in a remote burial ground on the windswept island of Salme, off the coast of Estonia. Archaeologists uncovered two ancient wooden boats, each carrying the remains of warriors laid to rest with weapons, jewelry, and fragments of their last meals. The site was unlike any known Viking grave. The craftsmanship of the weapons bore both Nordic and foreign designs. But the true breakthrough came not from the artifacts, but from the bones themselves. Perfectly preserved teeth, their enamel shielding tiny traces of genetic material, had survived more than 1,000 years. It was here that scientists realized they might hold a biological time capsule, a direct link to the earliest seafarers who would later become known as Vikings. Samples were rushed to specialized labs, where cutting-edge techniques promised to unlock secrets lost to the sagas. What these first results revealed would turn the tide of Viking history forever. Inside the sterile halls of genetic research centers, scientists prepared to extract DNA so ancient it bordered on the impossible. Every step was done in sealed rooms, free from modern contamination. A single human breath could erase centuries of evidence. The remains from Salme were compared with other Viking-era burials from Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, as well as ancient graves across Europe and Asia. Historians joined the effort, cross-referencing the emerging genetic patterns with written records, shipbuilding styles, and trade routes. Yet the investigation faced obstacles. Many samples were too degraded, and some graves held mixed remains from multiple individuals, blurring the genetic picture. Still, patterns began to emerge. Faint, but undeniable. Certain genetic markers in the Salme warriors did not match those found in purely Scandinavian populations. They hinted at connections stretching far beyond the frozen north, pointing toward regions no saga had ever mentioned. The question was no longer if the Vikings had foreign roots, but how far they truly reached. When the final genome sequences came through, the results were staggering. The Salme warriors' DNA revealed a genetic mosaic, part unmistakably Scandinavian, but interwoven with lineages from the Baltic, the British Isles, and even distant steppes of Central Asia. This was no accident of isolated marriages. It was evidence of centuries of contact, trade, and migration long before the Viking Age began. The Vikings, it seemed, were not a single, pure people, but a fusion of cultures, strengthened by diversity. One warrior's genome even carried traces of ancestry linked to ancient nomads who once roamed thousands of kilometers away. These findings shattered the myth of a homogeneous Norse bloodline and painted a picture of a society far more interconnected than historians had dared to imagine. The Northmen's power came not just from steel and seamanship, but from the vast network of peoples and genes that flowed into their ranks. The truth was undeniable. The Viking story had just been rewritten. Picture the scene more than 1,000 years ago. The Baltic Sea churns under gray skies as sleek wooden ships glide toward an unknown shore. On board, warriors speak in a mix of tongues, Old Norse, Baltic dialects, perhaps even distant steppe languages, their cultures blending in the cramped space of the longship. Some were born in the fjords of Norway, others on the wind-swept plains far to the east. They came together through trade alliances, marriages, and the lure of adventure, forging a brotherhood bound not by birthplace, but by purpose. As their raids spread across Europe, so did their genes, their myths, and their technologies. Settlements in England, Ireland, and Iceland became melting pots where local and foreign bloodlines merged again. What had once been isolated communities transformed into a vast cultural network, carried on the tides by these hybrid seafarers. The Viking Age, it turns out, was less an invasion of one people and more the rise of a shared identity born of many worlds. The revelation from ancient DNA has transformed our understanding of the Vikings. No longer can they be seen as a closed, isolated warrior race born solely of the frozen north. They were the product of centuries of connection. Sailors who carried not just weapons, but stories, technologies, and bloodlines across continents. Their true origin is not a single place on a map, but the meeting point of worlds. This genetic fusion may have been their greatest weapon, granting them resilience, adaptability, and the ability to thrive in lands both familiar and foreign. It challenges the very notion of identity in the ancient world, reminding us that history's greatest powers often rise not from purity, but from diversity. The sagas spoke of Odin and Thor shaping their fate, but in truth, it was the countless hands and hearts of many peoples that forged the Viking legacy. If this journey through hidden history has captivated you, like and subscribe for more untold stories that science is finally bringing to light.